Hello, and welcome to Everyday Adventures. It's February, which is honestly hard to believe for me, but since the beginning of the year, have been just struggling with how to figure out what this year was going to look like in regards to this podcast, what I wanted the tone to be, what I wanted it to look like. And the thing that I kept coming back to was, why did I create this podcast? What were the early beginning brainstorming ideas and thoughts? And I found myself even going back to those notes. And I just came back to the one word, adventure. And the whole premise of this podcast for me was that adventure is and should be accessible for anyone and everyone. That it shouldn't be this thing that has borders on it and was only for some people, that there had to be a way that adventure could be for everyone. And then I also started thinking about life and how sometimes I think really all of us can get so into the mundane, everyday routine of life, which I think routines are important, but I think that we can just look at it like that. This is what I'm doing. This is what I have to do. This is what it has to look like. And it can come off as just really, I guess, it can just get a negative condemnation, I guess. And we can lose the joy of life. We can lose the hope. And that really, if we viewed life for what it was and could see the adventure in the everyday things, then those hard days might just be a little easier. Those hard moments might just be a little bit brighter because we're able to see the good in things. We're able to see the hope. And so that's what I hope to talk about this year and beyond. And just to get back to focusing in my own life on what adventure looks like for me. And I hope that through that, others can be encouraged and just be able to hopefully bring hope to others as well by sharing a little bit about me and my story and my life and my family, that we're able to make people rethink what adventure is. And that's what Everyday Adventures is about. Whether you're traveling the world, which I've done and I love to do, or just exploring the creek behind your house, that those are all adventures. And that adventure doesn't have to always be about the flashy thing, but it can be the kind of thing that happens quietly behind the scenes in the choices that we make and the responsibilities that we carry. Today, I just want to talk about something that really is something I struggle with, and that's living in the in-between. It's living between expectations and reality. It's living between choices and responsibility, between love and logistics. All those things are part of this adventure. Because in my life, I'm not only a sibling to someone with special needs, I'm also a parent and guardian to a child with special needs. And that does change things. Growing up, my parents did something incredibly important. And I think that it's something that I just recently, in these last few years, have been able to really begin to understand, even though I thought much earlier in life that I did understand it. They made sure that we understood that from as far back as I can remember, I remember my parents talking to us about how every person in our family had strengths and weaknesses. And those strengths and weaknesses are what that person could bring to our family unit. And that's what made up our family. And it's something that we talked about quite often. Honestly, like, a pretty regular day-to-day basis in some shape or form. My mom would find movies and books that would also back that up. Um, and it just kind of made our family unit a little more sweeter. Even if we didn't always understand the necessity for my parents talking about this so often. And sometimes it was like, yeah, we know. Um, I understand now the value in that. Um, you know, and as we began to get older, and even when we were younger, my parents always made sure that we understood that my oldest sister did have special needs. Even though we may not have understood it at a young age, they still explained it to us. But they also never made it our job to parent her. We were informed, but we weren't burdened. We were included, but she wasn't our assignment. She was our sister first. In fact, when we were young, we thought we had the coolest sister ever. And to this day, if anybody wants to go on a vacation or have a fun party or just go to an amusement park, any of those like large fun things, you think of my sister Sonia. That's who you choose. Any of our siblings, out of there's 5 of us, and we would all tell you that she is like our top choice as far as siblings go for if you want to do something fun. If you want to have fun, you contact Sonia. And from a young age, we figured out that Sonia would do most anything that we wanted to do. It was great. It was this grown-up person. She's 15 years older than me, so, your earliest memories, are from when you're probably like, I don't know, 5 or something. I have a few memories of her before that, but like, your greater memories are like 5, 6, 7, 8, older than that. And I just remember, like, whether it was before school, after school, even, like I said, my young age, probably before school age, that if I wanted to do something fun, I wanted Sonia to be part of it because I associated her with fun. That she was part of what made my life fun. And even into like teen years, I remember being like, that's when I started to be like, oh my goodness, like I have this grown person that doesn't just want to sit on the sideline and like enjoy watching me have fun, but was so invested and wanted to be part of that fun. She liked doing similar things to what I wanted to do. She didn't tell me no because she was enjoying them too. So like all those crazy teenage things that most adults would be like, I'm either not doing it or no, you can't do it. She was like game for most of those things. And so I remember that being at the point where I was like, oh, she's like my equal. She's, like my best friend. And then I remember a point in my older teen years when I began to see, oh, okay, like this is kind of like what life is going to be. And eventually, like, I'm going to be an adult and she's kind of going to be still her because in my life, she hadn't really, like, from my perspective, changed, right? Like, she always just was that fun person, that fun, chill, hang out with me person. And like I said, somewhere in my teenage years, without announcing it or even fully understanding it myself, I made a decision. One that was made in my heart. It was one of realizing that someday my parents may not be able to take care of her. Or the realization of maybe they're not going to be around someday. And if my sister needed a place to belong, she could do that and have a belonging with me. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I wanted that part of my life, that part of who she was, that fun and invested and just pure love that she is, I wanted that to be able to continue for her. I didn't want that interrupted for her. But then I also, a selfish part of it was for me, right? Like, I wanted that still in my life. And I think it's important to that distinction about not having to, but choosing to and wanting to. That's important. And most people don't realize the importance of that. There's a distinction I've learned to hold very carefully and safely in my life. And that's the difference between an obligation and choice. From the outside, people often assume that the roles I carry were assigned to me. That caregiving, guardianship, and responsibilities simply fell into my lap. But the truth is, they didn't. Growing up, my parents were so intentional. They made sure that loving my sister never meant being responsible for her. They had people and services involved which filled that gap, whether that was them or a person outside of our home. I wasn't raised with the expectation that one day I would step in. As I mentioned earlier, it was a silent choice I made in my own heart when I was a teenager, but it was never expected. There was no quiet pressure, no spoken plan, no assumption that my life would be rearranged. How can you rearrange something that just came to be? And because of that, something important happened. When I chose this life, when I made that choice for me, when I chose to say yes to caregiving, yes to guardianship, yes to building a family shaped by special needs, it was exactly that. It was a choice. It wasn't an obligation, not a sacrifice that I was cornered into. It was just a decision rooted in love. And that difference matters more than people realize and understand. Because obligation breeds resentment, choice builds commitment. That doesn't mean that the choice is easy. It doesn't mean that it isn't heavy. And it certainly doesn't mean there aren't days when the weight feels overwhelming. But what it does mean is that when the hard days come my way, I can come back to the truth that this is a life that I chose and I continue to choose each and every day. A responsibility that I stepped into with open eyes. It's a path that I continue to walk in because it aligns with who I am, not because I was required to. And the choice shapes how I show up. How I show up for my sister, my child, and for myself. It's the difference between feeling trapped and feeling anchored. And that's where the adventure begins for me. Not in the big moments, but in the daily decision to live a life that's honest, intentional, and chosen. Fast forward into my adulthood and my life, and how it expanded in ways that I could have never predicted. In my 20s, well, let's just say, I lived some wild years, as most 20-somethings do. Well, I also lived a very different one, as I was also helping my sister, a different sister that's a few years older than me, take care of her medically complex son. Again, a choice, not an obligation. My 20s also brought traveling the world for almost a full year while doing humanitarian work as well as sharing my faith with others around the globe. My 20s also brought a short journey of the military in which I wasn't able to finish training due to an injury, but tried to stay in until it was clear I couldn't. But that was some of the best almost 2 years. But that 2 years was some of the best 2 years of my life. I pictured myself always as a parent. Honestly, a young parent. I pictured getting married young and having lots of children. But in reality, my child came to me in my late 30s in the form of a guardianship, an unknown. My 30s were a lot of caregiving for my parents again. A choice. A choice made of love, not obligation. The love that they showed me through the caring for all of us, including my older sister, my 30s were spent weaving myself into my sister's life in such a way that I slowly was immersed into the services that were working directly with her. And I began working directly with the service providers. Although I made a choice to be a caregiver, I really didn't know or understand what it would look like and entail until I was already living in it. It also gave me an even deeper understanding for my parents' lives and the decisions that they made. I became a parent to a child with special needs, and with that came guardianship, advocacy, paperwork, appointments, meetings, and systems. So now I live in a world where I'm navigating services for both my sister and my child. And let me tell you, the services, they don't talk to each other. Systems don't overlap. The expectations don't lighten just because I'm already carrying a lot. People often assume that because I understand the system, it must be easier. But knowing the system doesn't make it lighter. It just means that I'm more aware of how heavy it actually is. There's a version of special needs life that people don't always see. It's not just therapy appointments and school meetings. It's case managers. It's service eligibility. It's wait lists that are years long. It's re-explaining your story over and over to people who hold the access to these services in their hands. It's re-explaining why you have a child that's not yours, that's you have guardianship of, and not permanent custody of at this time. It's the unknown of that. It's explaining how you became a caregiver for your sister and why you keep doing it. And explaining why you want to continue doing it and why you don't want others holding the reins to either of their lives. It's keeping track of what your sister qualifies for, what your child qualifies for, and realizing that what helps one of them doesn't always help the other. It's advocating without being hardened. It's staying organized without losing heart. And it's doing all of this while still being a sibling, still being a parent, and still being an individual person. This is where the in-between becomes very real. Here's also what I feel I get most misunderstood. The general public, when I'm out, can sometimes, and when I say out, I mean just like out in society, out in the world, I feel misunderstood most by people feeling uncomfortable with our family dynamic. Whether that's people that know me and my family or people that don't and just experience this out in the world. They don't know where to place it. They don't know how to respond. And then within the special needs spaces, there can also be a strong narrative of mourning or grieving the life that didn't happen. And while I respect this deeply, it hasn't been my experience fully because I don't feel like my life was taken from me. It was given to me but differently. So on one hand, I have the rest of the world who doesn't know how to react or interact or always find place for my family. And on the other, I have this community of people who, at times, these families look like mine, sound like mine, but I don't always feel like they get me or understand either. And standing in that place, it can be lonely because you're not denying the hardship. I'm not just refusing to live a life defined. It's I guess for me it's more so that I'm just refusing to live a life that is defined by loss, by what others consider a disability or a special need. I'm refusing to live a life that is defined by those things alone. Every family has dreams that don't play out. Every family, every parent has dreams. Maybe a parent dreamed that their child would get into Harvard or be the starting quarterback. But the reality is, you can't have 30 quarterbacks. The reality is that not every person that applies to Harvard is going to get into Harvard. And let's be honest, not every child is going to live out the dream that their parents have for them. Some paths were never possible, not because something went wrong, but because life has limits. I find it hard, I guess. How can I mourn something that was never guaranteed? Instead, I ask, what is possible for now? What is possible in this moment? Maybe the dream looks different, and maybe the adventure may take another route. And sometimes, surprisingly, the same dream still exists. It's just reimagined. If you're a sibling, a parent, a guardian, or you're just somebody out there just navigating multiple roles, or you just came across this and you're like, oh, I'm trying to figure out where I fit in this world, I would love to hear your stories. I would love to get to understand and learn about what makes you you. I think that that's part of what I love about my life is I've gotten to know and experience many people and many people in different parts of the world and who have many different experiences. And I think that it makes us better people and it helps enrichen our lives and enrichen us as individuals. I also would say that for people out there that are navigating multiple roles, you're allowed to acknowledge the weight without resenting the life. You can advocate fiercely and still choose joy. You don't need to grieve to be realistic. Systems are exhausting, and that doesn't mean that you're failing. Living in the in-between doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're building something new. Like I said, I would love to hear other people's stories and just get to be able to interact with others who may have similar thoughts, or maybe you have a whole different take than I have on this. I would love to hear your thoughts and stories as well. Your stories matter, even if they don't fit neatly into anyone else's narrative. Next week, we'll be talking about how adventure doesn't always look exciting, and why that's still enough. If you're living in the in-between, whether that's managing services, relationships, or expectations, and love all at once, you're not alone. Adventure is for everyone. And sometimes the bravest adventure is choosing to see your life clearly, without grief, without denial, and without apology. I'll see you on the next adventure. Thank you for joining me.